Today, we're diving deep into the world of game dogs, and there's one name in particular that carries that kind of legendary weight. Carver dogs.
Exactly. And to get beyond just the myth, we've got a really great source here, Richard F. Stratton's article, The Truth About Carver Dogs. It was published on Stratton Pit Bull back in December 2021.
Okay.
And what makes Stratton's perspective so valuable is that he actually knew Maurice Carver, met him early in his career.
Right.
So our mission today, it isn't just to retell the Carver legend. We want to really understand what actually built that reputation. So while you might hear Carver dogs and think, okay, specific bloodline he created, well, our deep dive today is going to uncover something a bit more nuanced.
More to the story.
Yeah, the truth seems to be that Maurice Carver was, well, a master at finding and distributing top-tier dogs. Made him as much a shrewd evaluator, really, as a breeder.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. Stratton takes us back to his very first encounter with Maurice Carver. It was at a JT Collier convention down in Columbia, Tennessee.
Right, and this was during the Korean War. Stratton himself was just 20 years old, a sergeant in the 11th Airborne at the time.
Wow, young.
Yeah, and picture this. Carver, relatively young himself, pretty new to the dogs, but he's already the center of attention because he's got 3 dogs matched up.
3 dogs, okay.
And what's fascinating here is that even back then, 2 of Carver's 3 dogs really impressed the experienced guys like Bob Hemphill.
Mm-hmm.
One was a bobtail dog. It won its match, though Stratton notes Hemphill had maybe some reservations about its fighting style.
But the dog that really caused a stir, that was a red-nosed dog, later identified as Karn's Red. Stratton actually describes it as a leg breaker, which, that was a rare and, I guess, somewhat controversial trait in a dog back then.
Definitely controversial. And apparently Carver even told Hemphill something like, this guy Armitage claims he's never seen a dog break a leg. Well, this dog, Carver said, had reportedly done it 6 times.
6 times. And it wasn't just talk, was it?
No, not at all. During its match, Karn's Red actually did break its opponent's leg. Stratton paints this really vivid picture of Collier, the handler of the injured dog. He reluctantly picks it up, but then still insists on a scratch, even with the broken limb.
Just shows the intensity of scratch, meaning they release the dog to go back at the opponent, right? It's getting injured.
Exactly. It highlights the brutal expectations within that world.
Yeah. And Hemphill, who was a big advocate for old family red-nosed dogs, OFRN, he was naturally very interested in the breeding behind these impressive animals.
Mm-hmm. As Stratton points out, just having a red nose didn't automatically mean it was genuine OFRN lineage back then. Not at all.
Right.
True OFRN lines, they needed to trace back to specific dogs like Centipede or Cyclone and ultimately Lighthouse Vic. That was kind of the gold standard for OFRN breeding.
So Hemphill had his reservations about the bobtail style, maybe, but the main takeaway here is that 2 of Carver's 3 dogs that day were clearly exceptional.
Absolutely. Karn's Red especially. It had this unusual shaking style that apparently prevented opponents from getting muzzle holds. Very unique, very effective.
And beyond just the dogs themselves, Stratton also noticed Carver's, his charisma. Even back then, people were just naturally drawn to him, paid attention to what he had to say.
Yeah, there's that little anecdote, too, about Carver's reply to Hemphill. Hemphill asked why he didn't breed his own dogs.
And Carver just
said he lacked the patience for them to grow up. Something Stratton mentions, as a young guy himself at the time, he could definitely relate to that feeling.
That's interesting. And Stratton compares him to other respected dogmen like Klaus and Greenwood. They also had excellent dogs, but weren't primarily known as breeders either.
Exactly. It starts to paint a picture, doesn't it? That maybe being skilled at acquiring and recognizing quality dogs was just as crucial, maybe even more so for some, than the breeding itself.
Okay, so let's jump forward now. A few decades later, Carver had indeed become, as Stratton puts it, a foremost producer of good dogs. He even contacted Stratton later on to get a copy of one of his books.
Right, and Stratton couldn't resist, apparently. He included a little note reminding Carver of that earlier comment about not having the patience for breeding, given how successful he later became.
I bet. A nice little callback.
Yeah, and Stratton really emphasizes some truly great all-time dogs did come directly from Carver's kennels. There's absolutely no question his name became strongly linked with high-quality animals.
Stratton also adds that little detail, almost a side note, about how folks in the South often pronounced Maurice. They'd say Morris.
Just one of those little authentic details.
Yeah, and Stratton's article gives us some other interesting glimpses, too, into Carver's, his persona, beyond just the dog knowledge.
Right. He paints a picture of Carver as someone who was, well-dressed, drove a nice car, suggests a certain level of success, even relatively early on.
And then there are the anecdotes. Stratton mentions talk of various other ventures, houses of prostitution, drug trafficking, though he's careful he doesn't confirm or deny any of that.
Right. He just notes the rumors were out there. But the really important point, Stratton's core assessment, is this. Regardless of any other stories, any potential vices, Carver had this undeniable, almost innate understanding of dogs, a natural eye for what made a truly exceptional one.
And others seem to agree.
Absolutely. Friends who knew Carver later, in the 70s, they echoed this. They talked about his charisma, his deep knowledge, and apparently he was a captivating storyteller too.
There's one story that really stands out about Bill Stewart, a highly respected judge of dogs. He was apparently incredibly impressed by one of Carver's dogs, a black dog named Elmer.
Ah, Elmer. Yes, because Elmer actually defeated a son of Alvin the dog. And Alvin, well, he was a legend in his own right.
Alvin the dog. Tell us about him.
Well, Alvin had this incredible record. Apparently won 2 matches in a single day. Earl Tudor, another big name, considered Alvin the greatest he'd ever seen. Huge influence on pedigrees. So beating his son was a big deal.
Definitely. And Carver knew other key figures too, right? Like Floyd Boudreau.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
His friendship with Floyd Boudreau is really noteworthy. Stratton points out Carver got some of his best dogs from Boudreau's breeding.
So that links Carver to another really important lineage.
Right. Boudreau's line was later influenced by famous dogs like Debo and Blind Billy. It just highlights how interconnected this whole community was, These guys all knew each other, traded dogs, shared bloodlines.
Okay, so now we get to the really interesting part. The surprise element that Stratton brings to light. While Carver definitely did breed dogs himself.
Yeah, here's the twist. He was also a very significant dog broker.
A broker, meaning?
Meaning, Stratton paints this picture of Carver as someone who was incredibly well informed about the entire dog scene. He knew where the good ones were, kept track of them. And he wasn't afraid to buy good dogs, maybe cheaply, when he saw potential, with the clear intention of reselling them. This is really key, I think, to understanding the whole Carver dogs phenomenon.
So he was advertising them?
Constantly. For years, Carver consistently advertised game dogs for sale in all the various magazines. And there was always high demand for dogs associated with his name. So you had this constant flow, dogs coming in, dogs going out.
And Stratton says he had a reputation for honesty. That seems almost surprising given the nature of brokering sometimes.
It does, but Stratton stresses it. He says Carver consistently guaranteed a good dog, and by all accounts, that's exactly what his customers got, time after time.
So how did he manage that, guaranteeing quality when maybe not all the dogs were his own breeding?
Well, Stratton offers a couple of crucial reasons. First, maybe foremost, was just Carver's exceptional eye, his ability to identify truly outstanding dogs. He just knew a good one when he saw it.
That innate talent again?
Exactly. And second, of course, some of the dogs he sold were from his own strain, from his own breeding program. So that provided a solid foundation of quality right there.
Okay, and this brings us right to the heart of it, doesn't it? The potential misunderstanding around the term Carver dogs.
Precisely. Stratton makes it really clear. Not every dog sold under that name was a direct result of Carver's own breeding. And for the most part, customers didn't necessarily know the exact origin.
What mattered was the quality.
What mattered was they were getting a high-quality animal that lived up to the Carver reputation. That's what they paid for, and that's what they got.
So if we connect the dots here, this really explains why so many people swore by Carver dogs as, a top bloodline.
Absolutely. He consistently delivered the goods, regardless of the dog's precise pedigree on paper. The irony, as Stratton really highlights, is that many of the most sought-after Carver bloodlines might not have actually originated with Maurice Carver at all.
Stratton even mentions being amused overhearing dogmen talking about their secret methods for adding a little Carver blood into their own lines.
Yeah. It speaks volumes, doesn't it? It shows that almost romantic attachment people develop for these dog strains. It's almost like rooting for your favorite sports team, believing in its inherent superiority.
That's a great analogy. And this dynamic, it wasn't entirely unique to Carver, was it?
No, Stratton draws a parallel to earlier influential breeders, like Mr. Lightner. Apparently, despite the huge popularity of pure Lightner dogs, Lightner himself was open to using outside breeding if he saw an exceptional dog. Quality trumped purity sometimes.
Interesting. So that principle applied to many of the great old-time breeders.
It seems like it. It wasn't always about closed, pure lines. It was about recognizing and incorporating excellence.
So ultimately, Carver's real genius, maybe, was his effectiveness in getting good dogs into wide distribution. Doesn't matter so much where they initially came from.
I think that's a fair assessment. He had a real talent for identifying and, importantly, holding on to the truly exceptional animals when he found them. And many of the dogs he sold, well, they went on to become foundation stock for completely new lines elsewhere.
So how does his approach stack up against someone like, say, John P. Colby? You mentioned him earlier.
It's an interesting contrast. With Colby, customers generally knew they were getting a dog directly from Colby's breeding program. That was the brand.
Right, the Colby dog.
Yeah. With Carver, the specific origin might have been, well, less clear sometimes. But the consistent level of quality became the defining characteristic. The Carver name guaranteed a certain standard.
Okay, so let's try and tie this all together then. The legend of the Carver dogs, it isn't solely based on Maurice Carver's skill as a breeder, although he certainly did breed good dogs.
No, it's really a testament to his exceptional ability to identify, acquire, and then distribute high-quality dogs wherever he found them. He was just as much, maybe even more so, a shrewd evaluator and broker of talent as he was a creator of it.
And thinking about that more broadly, understanding this distinction, the breeder versus the broker, or maybe the curator in this specific context, it gives us a more nuanced appreciation for how certain people can have a huge historical impact, right?
Absolutely. It's not always just through direct creation. Sometimes it's through recognizing and disseminating quality that others have produced.
Yeah.
That ability to curate and distribute can be incredibly powerful.
Which, finally, it really makes you think, doesn't it? When you consider the impact of figures who excel at that kind of curation and distribution versus those who solely focus on creation, are there similar dynamics playing out in other fields you're familiar with? Are there figures who've shaped their industries more through their ability to spot and share talent or quality rather than purely through their own direct output? It's definitely something interesting to mull over.